dude broke into my house and I got into a fight with him. Crazy story. This story would take the whole podcast, so I'm not going to go too far into detail there. But dude broke into my house. Turns out it was a guy from my rival high school who was just like mad at me for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I get into a fight with him. I win the fight and I break my hand on the last hit. So you see, I can't even make a fist anymore.
Wow.
And this is my right shooting hand, and this is November.
Yeah, this
is like right before season gets going.
That's crazy.
So didn't get to play some of my senior year. And then I just rushed through the rehab and just played anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And I still did good. Like I averaged 20, but I had a broken hand. Like I couldn't even shoot. And so all my offers were gone because I'm a 5'10", injury-prone point guard. So I went the junior college route, and I went to Mesa Community College and made the team there. I had to walk on there, and then I got another wrist injury. And then I took a year off, and I started just training. I started getting certifications, training other people. And I made a big transformation in my own vertical, put on like 12 inches. Ended up going back to Northern Arizona, which is a D1 where I'm from, in Flagstaff, Arizona.
That's in the
and finally made the team. It was like, it's finally going good.
Yeah.
And then I broke my toe right before season.
That's crazy. Like
So
you broke the toe, or you broke the metatarsal?
Yeah, I broke the toe.
Damn. Yeah, I know that hurt.
And then I rushed back too fast. Re-broke it.
100%.
So it was like every October or November, I broke a bone. So what was crazy, it was nothing like ACL, like it wasn't anything bad. It was like a bunch of breaking bones, you know?
100%.
And so that kind of just set my career back. And then after I had that toe break, my coach wanted me to come back for my senior season. And I was like, nah, I'm done with basketball.
I feel you.
But it pushed me to get so interested in the injury prevention side and improving athleticism. And I was like, let's just go all in on this. And I just started training kids in the community,
100%.
doing stuff for free. And then eventually I went back to Tempe, Arizona, and I opened up a gym. And that's when I started on Instagram and started doing social media stuff.
100%.
And then it just kind of took off from there.
I read somewhere, again, that you at one point were sneaking into apartment gyms to train people. Is there ever a time where you got caught? And if so, do you have a story about that?
Yeah, plenty. So I used to sneak into apartment gyms because I didn't have a weight room.
100%.
Or I would go to like parks or whatever. And there are a few times where, you're just sitting there waiting for somebody to come in so that you can, somebody with a card, wait for them to come in and then sneak in behind them. I got caught a lot with that. But the worst one was when we would go to do pool workouts. And we would go hop in at these hotels or whatever, or apartments, and hop in the pool. And we made so much noise because we're doing plyometrics with like 10 grown men. And guys are yelling and the energy's high. And I got kicked out of plenty of apartments and hotels for that.
No, that's insane. I remember in college, me and a friend of mine would sneak into like because I didn't go to college for basketball. I went for academics, and we kept sneaking into the arena like pretty much on a nightly basis. And I remember this is actually how I met one of the assistant coaches on the team. I'm in there shooting one day and I'm on the gun, and when I was hot this night. I think I was shooting NBA threes, and I was shooting around 77% on, like, I want to say I was at around 800 shots or something like that. So he walks in and he sees me, and like he looks at the gun and he sees like the numbers. He's like, what's you don't play here. I'm like, no. I was like, I'm gonna walk onto the track team. That's like how I got into the facility. Yeah. So he's like, you ever thought about being like a practice player? I was like, I don't see why not. So like that's kind of how I got in with the coaches. Was just one night I snuck in there and like he just walked in. If my numbers would have been terrible, that would not have happened. But he saw some solid shooting, solid shooting splits, and he was like, "Word, all right." And I was kind of just a practice player for right before COVID, and then COVID happened, and I've kind of been home since. But 100% sneaking in.
I did women's basketball practice team.
Oh yeah,
no,
100%.
Nobody knows that. But after I was done at NAU, I was like, God, I want to stay around the game.
Yeah.
And I also heard that the ASU women's team had a good head coach. And I'm trying to get into coaching and like learn that, like really understand how to coach people, because there's a whole psychology to that side. And so I'm like, how do I get in and like study these coaches? And so I just did the practice team. Every day I would just go hoop against these girls, just go super hard. It was actually a lot of fun. And I learned a lot just from being in the arena and just learning from those coaches.
100%. Nah, like a couple of my friends were on the, were like go be like on the practice squad for the women's team. And, you know, when we would go and play pickup with the rest of the guys at the school, they would be really good. But you would hear stories about them getting killed by the girls team in practice. And it just like lets you, it allowed me to like see there's really like levels to this. And like at the higher level, like a girl will really kill you. Like,
for real. And they're physical.
100%.
Like guys are like athletic and like we're shifty and all that. But girls, it's just like, it's a compact game.
Yeah.
So they know how to use their body. Like every shot that goes up, you're getting a hard box out.
100%.
Like guys are too lazy to hit you every time a shot goes up. But in the girls' game, it's different.
Yeah, the girls' game is a lot more.
It was actually more physical. It was more physical playing against them than it is playing against D1 guys.
100%. And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
32.
32. That's amazing. That's really amazing. And you've been doing this for how long? Like training and stuff?
About 12, 13 years. Because I started early on in college.
Word, nah, because you're one of one of my like bigger inspirations. Because I didn't like before I started making content and stuff like that, I didn't really know that much. I just kind of did what my coaches and stuff told me in high school. And then I came across your page and I saw how like you really like dove into like the science behind things. And one of the things that you mentioned was hold up, I think I have it here. I don't know how to say this word. I'm gonna try my best. Electromyography. What is that for the viewers and myself?
Yeah, so EMG, electromyography, is basically like a sensor that you can put on the individual muscles. And so I would actually sneak into the ASU biomechanics laboratory and I would just test myself. I would put these EMGs on and go to the force plates, and I would just try all these different exercises. And then it's like, you're not really guessing. You can find out like, hey, what's the best exercise for the quads? Well, the EMG is on the quads, so it'll show you the electrical activity. So it'll show you how activated that muscle is.
And it shows you. And
so I can pair that with the force plates.
Okay.
And I can find out like, okay, in jumping, my quads activate at 110%. And then in a rear foot elevated, it activates at this certain. And so you can study all these different exercises and find out which ones train those muscle groups the best.
And also, I'd imagine this kind of helps you with figuring out like where an athlete is weaker at, or where they're maybe not activating a certain muscle group at a certain time, or like how they can be more efficient in their movements and stuff like that, right? That's
exactly. And then sometimes an athlete will be weak in a certain area and they'll fire that muscle harder because they have to make up for that weakness. So sometimes like the really strong muscle groups, they can activate it at like 80% and it still applies a lot of force into the ground. Whereas if it's weak, you got to go at 110%. And then you get an overuse injury because that muscle's overworking constantly. So it's a good like assessment tool, and we do it with our NBA players. But for me, it just helped me learn more and more about the human body. Because I wasn't satisfied with going on PubMed and reading these studies. Like I do that, that's great. But at the end of the day, they're doing everything on an untrained population, which we can't take that and apply it to like my NBA players.
Exactly.
And so it's like, I got to do these studies on myself. I got to do these studies on our players to get meaningful data. Yeah,
100%. Like you just said, you're 32 and you're still athletic, right? Like I imagine you do the things that you work on with your players. You do the same thing for yourself. And like, that's one of the things I really admired about what you did specifically, is the fact that you'll see a lot of trainers and it'll be like, they know what they're talking about. And it's like, I'm not even discrediting them. They know what they're talking about. But like, to see them doing it themselves, kind of, like, let's say if you were training me, like me seeing you doing the things that you're getting me to do and seeing how like it's benefited you, that kind of gets me to, just believe in like what's going on like way more. And
No, 100%. It's all about getting that buy-in.
So you said that you got your vertical up like around 12 inches in going into your junior year of college. What was your vertical before then?
It was like 32. Approach vert was 32, which means my standing vert was like 28, 29, like nothing special.
So you were in the 40s after that summer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, that's crazy.
After that year, I got to like, I want to say mid 40s, like 43, and then my best ever was 45.
45, that's amazing.
Yeah, 5'10", it had me windmills, like I could do 360s, rattle in some through the legs.
Yeah, that's tough.
I have a quick question. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways to measure your vert. Like, I think the standard way that everyone thinks of is just like the vert tech.
Yeah,
like,
the jump thing. Yeah.
Would you say that's the most accurate way?
The force plate is the most accurate. It's actually the only way where you can tell that real vertical, because it's measuring based on how much force you put into the ground. So you can't really cheat anything. Right. The Vertec, people cheat it because you could just pack your shoulder on the reach. You know, you got guys looking like they got T-Rex arms, and all of a sudden they got a 45-inch vertical, even though their bounce isn't really like that.
Yeah, that's what I've always thought is like you can just sort of like half-heartedly reach up when you're doing your standard reach, but then when you're jumping, you're extending all the way.
Yeah,
I always felt like the closest like sort of most accurate measurement I could think of, like just that you could do, not like at home or whatever. I always imagine like just the distance between like the top of my, like I always thought I'm 5'10", right? So if I can like touch my head on the rim, like that is a difference. And that's like the closest, more accurate way. But like,
no, that actually is a pretty accurate way.
100%.
The Vertec is kind of like the gold standard because like that would be hard to do. Like go hit your head on the rim, you know? You'd have a lot of concussions probably.
Zion would have knocked himself out.
100%. Oh, right.
Yeah.
He'd be done.
But no, that's really amazing. And you do the training that you do now at your house?
Yeah. So I used to have a gym in Anaheim. But I was tired of being on the highway constantly, away from my family, wasting 3-4 hours on the LA highways. And I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm going to build my gym. I'm going to have it all at my house so I can literally wake up, roll out of bed, and just start training athletes.
Yeah, I'm trying to get
like literally when I wake up, there's already athletes in the yard just warming up.
Yo, that's amazing.
And I can just get going.
That's amazing.
It's so much fun.
That's crazy.
That's a dream setup.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. So we got our full court here at the house, and then we did like 50 yards of turf. We got 3 different weight rooms here. We got all the recovery, saunas, steam room, pool. So, and then this podcast studio. So like, I don't have to leave for anything ever.
Yo, can I come to your house? Like, you know?
Yeah, man, come through.
You know, it's
definitely come through.
Well, word. We'll definitely talk more about that later on. When did you know you were going to like just build everything, and how long did it take you to get that all set up the way that it is now?
So I found the house. First of all, I was looking for big warehouses. I wasn't looking for a house, but I stumbled upon this crazy house that had mad yard space. And I'm like, let me just do it here. And so I made the decision quick.
Yeah.
I purchased the house within like a couple months. And then it took about 2 years to get to where we're at now. What? But it's like every single weekend we got contractors in here working on something new. So it was like 2 straight years to build all this out. But it was perfect because it was through COVID.
Yeah.
Like I bought the house right before COVID. And then my other gym shut down because of all the guidelines. But they couldn't shut down our house.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was perfect. We started building this out. And all of our NBA players still got it somewhere to train. It's perfect.
So when you talk about like, because when I was in, I want to say elementary or middle school, my father and my mom built a basketball court like in our backyard, right? Like, did you have to get sign-offs by your neighbors and stuff like that?
No, we probably should have, but we didn't.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
We just do it. It's better to ask forgiveness later instead of ask for permission.
No, that's.
But so our neighborhood, people see our house and they assume that we're like up on a hill or something. We're in a neighborhood. Like we're in a normal neighborhood. We got neighbors right there. But our whole neighborhood is really old. Everybody's like 80, 90. So everybody stays in their house. Like we're the only people on the block that are young, making noise.
Yeah.
So nobody really cares. Like I don't even know if they know that we're here.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. I'm trying to come out there.
Yeah, there was
100%.
a lot of stuff. Yeah, we had to get like a lot of it approved by the city.
Yeah.
Like basketball court, building all these structures and stuff. We had to get a lot approved by the city, but the neighbors, they don't really care.
Oh, they're chilling. Yeah, word.
I know a lot of hoopers, like myself in high school. I'd never even touched a weight room really until like practically when I got to college, and all I was doing was just jumping. Do you have any recommendations on workouts for younger kids that necessarily don't have gym access, but want to increase their vert in like simple ways at home?
Yeah, really until puberty, you don't need a weight room. Like there's so much like low hanging fruit. You just, hold isometrics, rear foot elevated split squats with your body weight, pistol squats, glute bridges, that kind of stuff, push-ups, planks, inverted rows hanging from a bar or something, pull-ups. Like there's so many ways to get stronger for these younger kids. And then once you hit puberty, which is generally, let's say 14, 15, like going into high school, that's where I think you should really start getting into the weight room. But even then, I have certain standards where you got to pass the body weight standards before you even get to the weight room. So whether you're 13 years old or you're an NBA player, you have to pass these body weight standards first, because you got to master your own body weight before we get you on a bench press or a squat.
Sure.
But yeah, I would say, especially for these young kids, like doing rear foot elevated split squat, iso holds, hold at the bottom for say 30 to 45 seconds for 4 sets, 3 days a week. That's something really easy that can start to build just some general strength and build their foundation.
Cool.
You see,
I appreciate that.
We talked about isometrics before. Isometrics, good thing.
There you go. It's a good thing.
I actually I've had this theory for like a while. Granted, it's not really backed by any science. I haven't really looked. You would know more about this than I would. I've had this thought that when you're younger, you should focus more on the mechanical and the movement side of things. Like for instance, like your technique for certain things, because that's going to be like ingrained in you going forward. And it's easier, and it's way easier to build good habits than it is to break bad habits. So I've always had this idea that if you're training, like the younger somebody is, you don't necessarily need to be focusing on getting them stronger as much as you need to focus on making sure they're doing things the right way, technically, athletically, with sprinting, running, jumping, all of that, so that later on they don't, with the EMG, they're firing their muscles the right way and they're doing things the right way.
Exactly.
Do you think that's accurate?
100%. What a lot of people lack though is they don't play multiple sports now.
Yeah.
So a lot of these kids are only playing one sport, and so you miss out on a lot of overall development. Like you'll hear Kobe talk about how he developed his footwork through soccer.
Yeah.
Or he did like tap dancing for a summer. And like all these different sports expose you to different movements, and that makes everything better. And so a lot of kids are just like AAU year round.
Yeah.
And so their sprint mechanics aren't good. Their change of direction mechanics aren't great. Their overall footwork isn't that great. And so, playing multiple sports, but yeah, just like moving more, playing. Like kids should be playing at the end of the day, because the mechanics are built in us innately. Like we shouldn't have to teach sprint mechanics. You should have perfect sprint mechanics if you play enough sports and you just do it enough. But most kids, it's like they're just not doing it enough, and they take these big periods off, right? You might take a month off from sprinting, and that just like detrains your body.
Yeah.
But our body, that the sprint mechanics are built into us. And somebody who jumps enough, they don't have to learn jump mechanics. Right? Like, do you think John Morant, Michael Jordan, you think they learned any of that? No, they just went out and they're trying to touch the rim.
100%.
But now you got kids who just don't do that enough. And so then they got to go and learn from somebody like me of like exactly how to jump, which can be beneficial. Like we can catch them up, but it's like, just go get the reps early on and you don't need any of that.
100%. 100%.
But yeah, like move. Don't worry about strength too much early on. We can always make up for strength later. And I actually have a theory that being a little bit weak and a little bit undersized early on is actually beneficial, because every time you go play basketball, you got to figure out how to hang physically.
Yeah.
So you're figuring out how to deliver hits. It's like the skill side of basketball, using your leverage, how to produce force in the ground. If I'm outweighed by 50 pounds, you master all that.
Yeah.
And then later on, you get in the weight room and you get the physical strength, and now you're a problem.
You're golden. Yeah. Shoot, I learned how to play in the paint playing against my dad. He would kick my, you know what, but like, then it was like going up against other kids my age in the paint. Like I did like a hop step and they're just flying off of me, and I'm just like, oh, this is a lot easier.
I feel like so much of the time,
Exactly.
the younger sibling ends up being like
the best, because they had to deal with, like, for instance, there's a reason why like it's always the younger one. They've had to deal with them getting better and like them kind of just having to catch up to them and figure things out physically. And then it's like eventually you're gonna get to a point where you guys are pretty level, like, you know, past the age of like 23, you guys are all gonna pretty much be fully grown. And at that point, it's like, yeah, I've had to deal with you guys, me being smaller all this time. Yeah, it's over for you guys.
I'm telling you. And then the other thing that people are missing is, like, I have a theory that little kids got to go against grown man speed.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they go against grown men, like they're messing around, you know, like we bring in our NBA players. My nephew lives with me, he's 12, and I have the NBA players go full speed against him. Like beat him 11-0 and show him your bag.
Yeah.
Like I brought in, the professor was here going against him.
Oh yeah.
He's gone against all these guys. Like, and I'm like, do not hold back, because the younger you can start to see these moves, your nervous system adapts, your brain speed starts to adapt. And then later on, they catch up with the length and the physicality. And like, you're never going to be able to get past that kid who's been exposed to these moves since they were 10.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, imagine playing against the professor on Sunday, and then you're playing against like middle school competition on
playing
Monday.
Against little Timmy
It's
on
gonna feel
Monday.
easy.
Yeah,
Exactly.
little Timmy can't hang. No, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Really quickly touching on, we're obviously talking about how a lot of kids are like hyper specializing as opposed to, getting involved in multiple different sports. I was thinking about that because I remember, I think this is probably very common. Like when I was playing high school basketball, I was playing AAU, I was playing in the summer. I was like nonstop playing basketball. And then my senior year, right after basketball season, I was like, okay, I'm not going to play AAU because I'm not going to college or anything. Like I don't need to hoop anymore. So I did high jump. And high jump changed everything for me. Like
really?
High jump made me way more athletic. And I started doing things like I started swinging my arms more. I started like approaching at certain angles. Like I started accelerating into my jump more, like all these things that like really took me to that next level. So I guess in that same vein, are there any specific sports or anything in particular that you think aspiring basketball players should get involved with?
Yeah, I think soccer is huge for the footwork. Tennis, I've been playing a lot of tennis lately. It's a great way to cross train. Gymnastics can be good early on, just developing like the adequate flexibility, body weight strength. We talked about passing those body weight strength phases. You're going to get that through gymnastics. And then other than that, some sort of like combat, like
I think
Brazilian
martial arts.
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Martial arts,
100%.
like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I got my nephew in that because you're learning how to use people's weight against them. And then we look at, okay, I'm guarding somebody 50 pounds heavier in the post. Like, can I give you a little bit and then take out the chair on you?
Yeah, exactly.
Like learning how to mess with their mass. So I think those are the main sports that I would focus on. But football, like go be a cornerback and you're going to develop that peer reaction. Yeah. The best defender I ever played against was Darrell Revis, who's a legendary corner. Doesn't even play basketball, but he's the best. Like awesome. I'll cross most people with like a little AI cross. He sat on that. Yeah. Like, every time I did that cross, he's just right there because his reaction speed is just so good because that's his entire job as a corner.
Yeah, I love that so much. I mean, a lot of like great, athletes in general, but I'm thinking even like specifically NBA players, I feel like grew up playing a lot of different sports, and those skills definitely
85% of NBA players grew up playing multiple sports. They did a study on that. That's so tough. Only 15% actually specialized from an early age.
So I guess what's interesting to me is like, is there like some sort of like point, like at what age, I wondered, should you start going all in on something, right? Because like obviously an NBA player isn't, playing in multiple professional leagues. So like, is there like a specific age or part of your development where you go, okay, I've been playing all these different sports, but now I think it's time to really go all in on basketball?
I would say high school. I would say like going into high school, because now AAU is so important that like, how are you realistically going to go play a different sport when in the off season you're playing AAU? But I think in their performance training, they have to, what we call microdose. You microdose these other sports. So like, yeah, you can't go play soccer, but in our warm up for our lifting session, I could give you a soccer ball and do different footwork stuff. I can do different patterns through a ladder that expose you to the footwork that you're missing out on from other sports. We do gymnastic type movements. We do yoga type stuff. So we do reaction stuff. So it's almost like your performance training session is microdosing all of these different sports. And now you don't have to go physically be signed up for a team. So now you can play basketball year round.
Got you.
100%.
So I'd say normally around like age 14.
What would you... I meant to actually ask this earlier, but it kind of just slipped my mind. When you were playing, right, and maybe now, like, what's like your favorite move or like your best skill or like your go-to? Like when you get picked up on the squad, like what are we picking you up? Like, you know?
Yeah, so finishing.
Oh, okay.
I can finish anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like my touch around the rim. That was the thing. So my dad sent me a fake letter when I was 10 years old from the Phoenix Suns to our mailbox. I didn't know it was him. And the letter said, "We love your talent, but you have to master the floater because you're undersized. And if you master your floater, then we're going to draft you right out of high school." And I believe that.
That's genius.
100%. So
I think
like,
I'm stealing that.
I'm going, bro, I went all in on my floater. Like every day, like 200-300 reps a day on my floater. And it just developed my touch like crazy. So now I can like come through the lane, any type of floater off any foot, like extension layups. So that's definitely my best skill. Like my ball handling is good, and then my finishing is really good.
I'm horrible at floaters. like I think like if I'm going to the basket, 9 times out of 10, like people be like, "Oh, like you gotta use your floater more." I'm like, yeah, if I'm getting that close to the rim, I'm trying to dunk on somebody or like at least get to the rim. Like, you know, floaters. Yeah. I remember every time I tried one in high school, it would always hit the back of the rim. Like it would be on target. It would be like the arc I felt like was all right. Always hit the back of the rim. And like at that point, I just kind of got discouraged from it. I probably should have definitely trained it more, but nah.
It's good for longevity. It's easier on your body.
100%.
Just stop short and hit a floater.
100%.
Yeah.
But the other thing is a floater is not a dead end skill. There's certain dead end skills where you work on that skill and it doesn't lead to other things.
Yeah.
But floaters, when you work on that, it develops your touch so well.
I feel like ball handling also does that.
Everything gets better. Ball handling is a good example of like not being a dead end skill.
Because as I've worked on my handle like a lot more, I'm not as terrible at floaters anymore. Like it'll hit the back of the rim and go in sometimes. But
because you're just improving like that general touch. So you see somebody improve their handle and all of a sudden their passing gets better.
Yeah.
Or like they catch better.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's why like young kids got to live their life with a ball in their hand. Like we talk about drills, great, but like I grew up in my house just dribbling around everywhere. That was like my one superpower is my mom let me dribble in the house. That was like my only advantage I ever had.
Yo, I remember I got beamed with a slipper one time for doing that. I was like, all right, I guess we're not doing that anymore. But I'm guessing this is actually another question that gets asked very frequently, and I'm guessing based off of what you just said, handling and ball control would be like the first skill you really want to train a young kid at.
I would say that's probably the most important early on. But I mean, shooting is obviously like shooting goes up in value every 5 years.
Yeah.
Like we see where it's at now, and obviously that's the skill that we should probably learn to develop young. But I think that people start on a 10-foot hoop way too early. Like it should be a little Tykes hoop.
Yeah.
And you should be just working on general coordination and form.
Because it's like when you're shooting on a...
Why do we grow up chucking it with two hands? Why don't we grow up with perfect form?
100%.
And just gradually raise that hoop up.
Yeah. Yeah, that exactly. Because that's the reason why I always never wanted to say shooting was the first skill that you would develop. Because like when you're 5 years old, you're not getting the ball all the way to a 10-foot hoop. But the way that you say it, like having like the hoop gradually get bigger and bigger as you get bigger and bigger, that makes a ton of sense. 100%.
Like Steph Curry, all these guys, like they all grew up on little Tykes hoops. You know, we think of like that as just like fun little playing. It is, but you're developing your hand-eye coordination.
100%.
You're developing your form like from age 3.
So, you know, with things like jumping, speed, etc., you know, there's obviously a large genetic component to that, or at least it feels like it. Would you say there's any sort of genetic component to shooting? I know that like sounds weird, but I think about some guys that
I really do feel
you
like
know,
there
they put in so much work, but it just, something doesn't click, you know?
Yeah. No, 100%. I've thought about that question so often. I do think there's a little bit of a genetic component, but I don't think it's anywhere near what the genetic component is in like jumping or speed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all early childhood.
Yeah.
Because we look at these guys who shoot and we call it natural ability, but we didn't see what they were doing as a little kid.
100%.
The other thing is there's more studies on like your vestibular system. That's like where you are in space. Somebody like Steph Curry has crazy vestibular system. We now know that you can improve your vestibular system by picking up a baby and moving them through space. So the kid that was left in the crib and was not picked up has a poor vestibular system. And so then it doesn't matter how many reps they get later on, they might not ever be a Steph Curry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like from day one, this stuff matters. So it might be less genetic and more just like early childhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
All right, so
I appreciate that.
Move my baby around. They shoot better.
Move your baby. I'm about to have my first baby in a couple months.
Oh, congratulations!
I'm gonna have him all over the place.
Yeah, congrats. That's
Training
awesome,
starts
man.
day one.
Oh my god,
no days
dude,
off.
that kid's gonna be different.
100%.
Like 2 years
Yeah.
old doing box jumps.
And he's gonna have your nephew, because your nephew's gonna be elite when he gets older. So now it's paying it forward.
That's the thing.
100%.
It's a wrap. And plus he's got the NBA players coming through. So from day one, he's going to be around like that environment, which I think that's huge.
100%. 100%.
But knowing my luck, like he'll probably just be like into art or something.
Yeah.
Like he's not even going to hoop probably.
Like basketball. I don't even like basketball. I see that every day. But
Right.
But painting, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Nah, that's amazing. That is. Like just talking to you, I feel like I've gotten smarter. 100%.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like
I'm just obsessed. Like I'm not even smart. I'm just obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was a straight C student. Shoot, I was in resource as a kid. Like I was in the special class because like I couldn't even hang with the other kids. But once I got to college and I started studying the body, it was like, this is it.
100%.
I realized how much I love it. And then I learned how to learn. And so then it just kind of all accelerates. And once you're passionate about something and you go all in on that, like sky's the limit.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like a lot of times people ask me about different, athletic things. They're like, yo, how do you like just know this? I'm like, the same way like you would look up like cheat codes in a video game, I'm on Google looking up stuff like this. Like the same way you're looking up the best ways to make your 2K player better, I'm looking at stuff to, help me be more athletic and stop getting injured. It's like, it's the same thing, honestly.
Right.
Like YouTube, the internet is such a like useful like resource. And I feel like a lot of times it can really like from an early age, like now the way that like kids have it. Well, I mean, I had it this way too, but you can really Google something and it'll show you everybody's opinions on it. It'll show you can go and test things out, see who you agree with, who like, because that's a lot of what I do. I'll look at things like, for instance, the knees over toes guy. He's a friend of mine, and then I'll look at like stuff that you say, and then I'll kind of cross reference like what you guys are both saying. Then I'll work on stuff on myself and see like what I feel about it, and then like I'll make a video about it or something like that, or then I'll go check like a study or something like that. And the fact that there's so many different people who are so knowledgeable on what I'm trying to do, which is be more athletic and be better at basketball and be healthier and stuff like that. I feel like that has allowed me to know these things and understand these things on such a higher level versus like if I was going to school. Going to school for it is definitely important, but like in high school, like your high school phys ed class or something like that versus like,
Yeah.
100%.
No, exactly. I mean, we have access to whatever we want now. When I was growing up, I didn't have any of that. Like, we had a website called T Nation, and that was it. And it was all like pure bodybuilding. And so like I was just studying that as a kid
100%.
and like trying to do that in high school. But yeah, now, and the other thing is, people underestimate the impact of like being able to learn moves on social media. Like when I was growing up, bro, like I would have to pause the tape to see a move and like hope that it came back on SportsCenter, that I could see that again, like an Allen Iverson crossover, and then go work on it. But you're never going to find these moves again. So you got to basically memorize it and then go out and practice it. But now it's like I can just have my cell phone right here and I have 1,000 trainers breaking down this move.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can just go work on it. So that's why you see a lot of these like 10-year-old kids with like NBA level footwork.
Yeah.
Because they're studying it directly from NBA players.
100%. No, there's a move I got from you. It was one video you were talking about like the different kinds of like dribblers that are gonna cook you, and you were talking about like the hip swivel thing, and I was like, I'm kind of good at it, but I was like, the way he does it looks way smoother. So I started like really getting better at it, and like now it's like one of the staples of my game now is like the hip swivel, or like, I don't know, I call it the dip, but it's like where you'll kind of lean back and your heel will touch the ground and like it'll shift your weight back before you go forward. Like that, those two moves are like my favorite to use. 100%.
Yeah, the hip swivels, that's a monster once you figure that out. I learned it from Steve Nash. Steve Nash used to just like skip down the court, just like swiveling his hips.
Yeah.
And then I used to work on that a lot and I forgot about it. And then I saw Dior Johnson doing it. Like he would come down the court just swiveling the hips, and I was like, I got to get back to that. So 100%. I started working on that again.
100%.
But yeah, like if you understand like the timing of that, it's so hard to guard.
Exactly.
Do you, you work, I'm sure, with athletes across all age ranges and all, levels. I'm sure you work with high schoolers, but also you're working with NBA players and, so on and so forth. Do you prefer one or the other? Like, do you get the most joy out of working with like the highest level NBA players or someone else, or is it all sort of the same to you across the board?
Yeah, I mean, every age range provides its own advantages. Like one of my favorite lately has been taking kids who are like almost ranked or like ranked in the 80s, 90s and trying to get them higher. Like I got a couple kids, Jared McCain, Kylan Boswell, Dusty Stromer. They all started with me beginning of COVID. They're the first ones in this house. None of them were ranked, and now they're all like top 25, all 5-star. So like that's next level because you just, helped out a kid who's going to like change their whole career. So in a way that's a bit more rewarding than helping the NBA superstar who would be there regardless without me.
Totally.
But at the same time, like I work so hard attaining this knowledge. The biggest test of your knowledge is like, can you get somebody who's already good even better?
Yep.
Because anybody can get an untrained high school kid better, but can you get an NBA player better who's already been training for a decade? And so that's more so like a good test of my knowledge. And so that's like more intellectually stimulating, whereas training the high school kid is more like emotionally satisfaction.
Right. That makes total sense.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like that would definitely be the case.
And then training kids, like, because you're not just changing their body, like you're changing them mentally.
Right.
Like they're sponges before the age of like 15, 16. And so you're a mentor to them where, if they look up to you, you can change their entire life with just the words you say to them.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and those it's sort of like you mentioned earlier with shooting, I feel like those earliest habits are exponentially, more
beneficial,
impactful than anything else.
Yep, absolutely.
100%.
One random note that I had here, just because I dealt with it in high school and I know a lot of kids deal with it. Two things. First of all, do you have any recommendations on avoiding shin splints? And the second thing, I think this is really geared towards a lot of high school kids, is they deal a lot of them deal with Osgood Schlatters.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you had any advice on how kids dealing with that could keep hooping.
Yeah. So the number one thing for both of those, but especially shin splints is basically all overuse. It's an overuse injury. So managing your load, like not going all in. That's what we all do, is like we'll rest for a week and then we go play an AAU tournament with 5 games.
Yeah.
And like obviously we're going to come away with some sort of injury from that. So it's not really like, it's not just how much we're doing, it's how we got there, like how progressive you climb that ladder. That's the number one thing over any exercise or anything, is just managing your load. But then the other thing is like getting really good with plyometrics is huge, because shin splints is normally, you can't handle the impact. And so you're not absorbing it in the right areas, and it's just shooting up through your shins. The forces from the ground shooting up through your shins. There's something called pre-activation, which basically means right before the foot is hitting the ground, your calf, your antib, your quads, like all these muscles are firing to brace for impact. Some kids have that timing off, or they're just not good at it at all, and they just slap the floor. And so you're not braced for impact. So again, you don't absorb the forces in the right areas, and it goes up through the shin. So starting with like really low level, easy plyometrics, jump rope type stuff, and then taking it multi-direction, going lateral with your hops and stuff, single leg hops, that builds that ability to pre-activate, and starts to teach your nervous system how to be braced, how to use the muscles to brace for impact. So that's a huge thing for shin splints, for knee pain, for anything. And then the other thing is you can isolate it. Like training the posterior tibialis is really, really important. I would say the most important muscle for shin splints is posterior tibialis.
I know where the anterior one is. Where's that?
Anterior. So posterior is like around the calf area.
Okay.
But instead of a normal calf, the tendon goes down and wraps to the arch. So it's the muscle that holds up your arch. So some people have an arch, and then they get lazy and they take like a month off from the gym and their arch drops. And normally that's the posterior tibialis that weakened. And so you could do like different calf raises, that works. But like if you can, I just posted a video on this actually. If you can like put your foot like this and like hang a band from it and then lift this way. So you're training the inside of the ankle. You're training like the inside muscles.
Okay.
That's what's going to train the posterior tibialis. And then anterior tibialis can be important. It helps the posterior tibialis, and that's like a typical like raise, like raising the toes off the floor.
Okay.
And so you could do resisted. You could do that up against a wall. So like training the antib and the post tib is like the initial steps. Like you want to do that for your first week or couple weeks. And then you want to, if you're pain-free, you want to get into those plyometrics. The plyometrics is going to be what really prevents the injuries long-term.
Yeah. Yeah, no, plyometrics are big.
And then Osgood Slaughter. Go ahead.
No, I was saying like plyometrics are really big. And like you said, with like managing your load, like for instance, I see some jump programs are like just having kids just straight up just doing box jumps, like, which is okay if they're like lower level box jumps. But I normally tell kids to first start with like landing. And like once you like get like that landing right and stuff like that, then you can start doing like box jumps and stuff, or like landing and then jumping up onto things, so that you're kind of building into it. Because if you're just doing a 50-foot box jump, you're going to hurt something if you're not warm, you didn't gradually get there, and you're just immediately killing yourself doing these high box jumps. You're going to feel pain. You're going to mess something up because your body's not prepared to do that yet. And
And then they feel pain, and then they assume, oh, plyometrics are bad for my knees. No, plyometrics is one of the best things you could do for your knees, but you got in too fast. You rushed it. Like you got to be patient and gradually ramp it up. So for Osgood Slaughter, similar advice. The only thing with Osgood Slaughter, it's very similar to patellar tendinopathy, and we know the isometric holds really help. So like if you're feeling it, remove the jumping, and then get into like an isometric phase. And you could do a couple weeks of isometrics, 45-second holds, 4 sets, 3 to 5 days a week. And that'll make a really big difference in the pain levels. And then you get into more traditional strength training and build up the strength in the tendon. And then you go back into plyometrics, and then you get back into sports. So it's like a 4-phase cycle where it's isometrics, normal strength training, plyometrics, and then sports.
Cool. That's super helpful.
But even when you get back into sports, like you can hold with your isometrics as a warm-up.
Yeah.
It's called an analgesic effect, where you actually decrease the pain in the tendon.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have like some 3 out of 10 pain. After isometrics, you probably have 0 or 1 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And is there a specific?
So I would keep those isometrics in.
100%. Is there a specific isometric exercise that's your favorite to do?
I love Spanish squats. That's my favorite. So Spanish squat, you get bands around each leg at the very top of the shin, so almost right behind the knee. And then you get your weight back. You keep your shoulders right above your hips, and you just hold it like a 60-degree knee angle. Like it doesn't even have to be that low. And that's going to maximally load the patella tendon.
Okay. Word.
So that works like a slant board. I like a slant board, bend it like a 45-degree angle and just hold that. That works. Traditional knee extensions actually work really well, like the knee extension machine.
Okay. Yeah, because the one
access to that actually works really well.
The one that I do, they're like, I think they're called isometric quad extensions. Yeah. Where I'll kind of use like a towel or something and wrap it around like a post or something, and I'll kind of like lean back and then kind of like activate my legs and try and like keep my body more. Like it's like you get the picture here, like
yeah. It sounds like. Well, are you on the ground or are you standing?
On the ground. It's like a reverse
so it's kind
Nordic.
Of like a reverse Nordic. Yeah. Those work too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's a good option. It's less of like, it's less of what exercise and more of like the sets, the reps, how much you're doing.
Yeah.
Like there's, I could list off 10 really good exercises, but it's really like how often, how consistent you are with them at the end of the day.
Okay. Is there any exercise that you don't like doing?
Oh, there's a lot.
Okay.
For patella or for just in general?
Like if an NBA player was coming in tomorrow, what exercise like do you know you're like, yeah, we're not doing that? Like maybe a popular one where you're just like, yeah, we're not doing that.
I don't do a lot of Olympic lifting. And I like it. It's effective. It can improve vertical jump. There's plenty of studies behind it. But there's a lot of times where you're going to catch the bar and you don't get your elbows under and the bar comes down on your wrist. Yeah. And a lot of guys get sore wrists. And I'm not messing with any wrist.
You're not messing with wrists anymore.
I'm not messing with the wrist. Like, especially after all my history. Like I saw how it ruined my shot. No, I don't mess with Olympic lifts because we can get the same power output from other things. Yeah. Like I can hold a trap bar and jump and get a similar or even bigger lower body power output with like no additional risk.
100%. No. Word.
So that's one. Let me think. Is there any other ones that I hate? I don't do a ton of really, really heavy bilateral squats, so like 2-leg squats. I do a lot more single leg work. Yeah. And I do use squats occasionally, but I feel like we have to be very strategic with it because there's a lot of downsides to it. There's a lot of people that build imbalances because your right leg's typically like 15, 20, 25% stronger than your left leg. So if I'm loading really heavy, at some point I'm just going to take over more and more with that right leg. And that imbalance is going to get even bigger. And that one of the biggest risks of injury is an imbalance between left and right above 15%. And so, if they're at 15%, we're fine. But if we make that worse and we get them up to 20, 25, 30%.
Now you're really having some big problems.
We're risking an injury. Yeah. And is it worth it? Because there's nothing magical about a back squat. Like I can get somebody just as strong with single leg squats. Like the back squat is not the king, it's just an option. Yeah, and it can be a good option for certain people.
Like when I was younger, I used to always think, I was like it's crazy because this is what one of my trainers in high school said. He was like, yeah, squats build athletes. Yeah, got to do that every day. I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing squats every day then. Well, not every day, but like every time you work out or something like that. I was like, all right, I guess every time we're doing legs, we're doing squats. And it's crazy because like even now I still do a lot of squatting, and maybe should do more single leg squatting, like Bulgarian split squats, stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's all a mix. Like I still do back squats, but I think people do it year round and they just crush themselves with heavy weight. It's like we could build strength in many, many other ways while improving our imbalances instead of making it worse.
100%.
You know, I never even thought about like lifting legs at all, even though like I was trying to jump higher, because like I always just jump naturally. I guess like I think before I'd ever lifted legs once, I had already gotten to the point where I was over 40 inches.
That's
max
crazy.
vert. And like I really only started thinking about lifting once I started getting all these knee issues. You know, like I got to the point where like both my knees were so messed up I couldn't jump. Like it just got worse and worse and worse. And then I was like, okay, I need to like figure out what's going on here with my muscles.
It's crazy because
try to
like
fix
me and you
that.
had completely different experiences with jumping. Like I had my first dunk before I started really lifting legs, and then it was like once I started doing, I actually did plyometrics after I would lift in like a specific year, and I would go and like I would lift heavy, and then afterward I would do like my plyometrics, and I did like 2 to 3 times a week, and that was when I went from like, I want to say just regular barely dunking to like I got my first windmill after that. And yeah, no. So like lifting, like people would be like, oh, so were you just naturally this bouncy? I was like, nah, I was like athletic-ish, but really I was like doing a whole bunch of plyometrics and lifting.
Yeah. My roommates hated me because I literally didn't lift, going out every night and then just flying.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's the thing. You can get very bouncy just from jumping.
Yeah.
It's just not the best long-term solution. Like you want to build in the lifting, and like even if it's just for the injury reduction side of things. But there's plenty of people who got 45. Shoot, I've seen guys get 50-inch verticals without ever touching a weight.
That's amazing.
So it is very possible, but it's like managing load and then putting in just enough strength training for just general tissue quality.
Yeah. Gotta keep those tissues high quality.
100%.
Yep.
But yeah, going back to what I had mentioned earlier on in the pod, yeah, would you be like down to like just have me come out there and like work with you for, I don't know, like a summer? Like I'd help you like run through like training guys, and I just for free, like I would just be out there with you and like, you know, just kind of help out any way I can. Definitely. Just to like learn, you know.
100%. You're welcome anytime. You let me know. The only thing that you got to do for me is you got to teach me how to use TikTok.
All right, I got you. 100%.
That's it.
You'll have like 1 million followers by the end of the summer.
Teach me how to, I don't know how to use TikTok. I'm just guessing. So that's, yeah, for sure. That'll be a fair trade.
100%.